18 is a big deal. It's the age when the world starts calling you an adult, even if you're still figuring things out. It's the moment when your parents are supposed to stand beside you, beaming with pride, celebrating everything you've become. For Suri Cruz, April 18, 2024, should have been that kind of day. But it wasn't. As she stepped into adulthood, the cameras weren't chasing her like they once did. The headlines didn't scream about her graduation. And perhaps most painfully, her father, Tom Cruise, one of the most famous men in the world, wasn't there to witness any of it. Instead, just one day later, Tom was photographed laughing and smiling at Victoria Beckham's 50th birthday party in London, surrounded by celebrities, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, raising a glass under the chandeliers. Not a single mention of his daughter's milestone. Not a word, not a post, not a whisper. It wasn't just any birthday, it was Suri's 18th. A moment that should have belonged to them. This absence wasn't new. It was just the final, clear sign of a growing distance that had been building for over a decade. Because there was a time when Suri was the most photographed child on Earth. When she was born in 2006, her face made headlines across the globe. Her baby pictures, taken by renowned photographer Annie Leibovitz, appeared on the cover of Vanity Fair. The world watched her first steps, her outfits, her every move. Paparazzi chased her and her parents through airports and city streets. But somewhere along the way, that spotlight dimmed. And it wasn't just because she was growing up. It was because the people who used to stand beside her began stepping away. Especially the man the world once saw cradling her in his arms, calling fatherhood a spiritual experience. So what happened? How does a father who once promised to always be there simply vanish from his daughter's life? Many have tried to explain it away. He's working. He's filming. His schedule is complicated. But when you look at the full picture, a different truth begins to emerge. Tom Cruise wasn't just absent because he was busy. He was absent because he chose to be. And that's a hard thing to say out loud, but it's even harder to ignore. Let's be clear. Tom Cruise is a man who has flown helicopters, climbed skyscrapers, and shut down entire cities for his movie scenes. He's not a man without resources. If he wanted to be present, he could have been. If he wanted to see his daughter graduate, he would have found a way. But he didn't. And when you look at the timeline, the pattern is impossible to miss. Since Tom and Katie Holmes divorced in 2012, Tom has rarely been seen with Suri. In fact, under oath during a 2013 defamation lawsuit, Tom admitted that there was a period of over 100 days when he didn't see Suri at all, not even a visit. He insisted they spoke on the phone. But the emotional gap was already growing. This wasn't just about distance. It was about disconnection, about a slow, steady retreat, one that seemed less about logistics and more about loyalty. Loyalty, perhaps, to something else entirely. And that brings us to a crucial turning point in this story, a point where the fairy tale of Tomcat ended and something much more complicated took over. Because as much as the world was watching the red carpets and the wedding gowns, something else was pulling the strings behind the scenes. To understand why Tom Cruise truly disappeared from his daughter's life, we have to go back. Back to when he first met Katie Holmes. Back to the whirlwind romance that looked like a dream, but may have been crafted with a script of its own. Let's rewind to where it all began. From the outside, it looked like a dream come true. In 2005, when Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes went public with their relationship, the media couldn't get enough. He was the action star, larger than life. She was America's sweetheart, young, fresh-faced, known for her role as Joey on Dawson's Creek. Together, they became Hollywood's new obsession. The press dubbed them Tomcat, and overnight, their love story became a spectacle. There was the now famous moment on Oprah, where Tom jumped on the couch, declaring his love for Katie to a shocked and slightly amused audience. There were red carpet kisses, staged moments of passion, and headlines that made their whirlwind romance sound like something straight out of a movie. They got engaged after just 7 weeks. Their daughter Suri was born less than a year later. And just 7 months after that, they were married in a lavish ceremony at a 15th century Italian castle. To some, it felt magical. Fast. Intense. But magical. Hollywood loves a fairy tale. We've seen it before. Brad and Angelina on the set of Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Ben and J-Lo, rekindling their romance after decades apart. The industry sells love like a blockbuster. But even in a town full of make-believe, something about Tom and Katie's story felt off. There were small moments, subtle red flags. And when you look back now, with clearer eyes, they're hard to ignore. One of the first signs that something wasn't quite right came during a 2005 interview Katie did with W Magazine. She was gushing about Tom, saying they were still in the honeymoon phase. But she wasn't alone in the room. Sitting quietly next to her was a woman named Jessica Rodriguez, described by the magazine as Katie's Scientology chaperone. A chaperone. During an interview, when the topic of Scientology came up, and the reporter asked if Tom had been auditioning women before meeting Katie, a rumor that had swirled for years, Rodriguez abruptly cut in. She shut the question down, called it rude, and steered the conversation back to how in love the couple was. When asked why she was even there, she smiled and said, "Oh, we're just best friends." But the energy in the room told another story. For many readers, it was the first public glimpse of something controlling behind the curtain. Most celebrities don't need handlers during personal interviews, certainly not ones who answer for them. But when you factor in Tom's deep and long-standing ties to Scientology, things start to make a little more sense. You see, Scientology isn't just a belief system. It's a powerful organization with its own rules, hierarchy, and strict expectations for those inside, especially high-profile members like Tom Cruise. According to former Scientologists, including actress Leah Remini, the church is known for exercising intense control over its members' personal lives, including relationships, parenting, and public image. Some reports have even claimed that before Tom met Katie, the church was allegedly auditioning potential girlfriends for him. While this has never been confirmed, the story gained traction in the media, and to this day, it's still one of the most persistent rumors tied to their romance. And then there was the sonogram machine. In an interview with Barbara Walters, Tom revealed that he had purchased a sonogram machine to use at home on Katie while she was pregnant with Suri. Not something most couples do. In fact, most doctors don't even recommend it. Too many ultrasounds can expose the fetus to unnecessary sound waves, and medical professionals criticize the move as irresponsible. But Tom, ever the action hero, said he wanted to be part of the process. But he'd donate the machine to a hospital afterward. At first glance, it might seem like a romantic gesture, hands-on, involved. But when you put it next to everything else, chaperones, public declarations, controlling narratives, it starts to feel like part of a larger pattern. A relationship where appearances mattered more than authenticity. Where outside forces may have played a bigger role than most realized. And it raises the question, was this really a love story, or something more scripted? Katie once said in an interview that she had dreamed of marrying Tom Cruise since she was a little girl. For a while, it looked like a fantasy come to life. But what happens when the fantasy starts feeling like a trap? When the man of your dreams is no longer just a husband, but part of a system that wants control over your choices, your child, and your voice? These are the questions that Katie would eventually have to face. And as the months passed, she began to pull away, quietly, carefully, and without public drama. But before we get to her escape, we need to understand the full weight of what she was up against. Because this wasn't just a marriage ending. It was a mother fighting to protect her daughter from a world that was more powerful, more watchful, and more dangerous than most of us could imagine. Sometimes, in order to understand why someone disappears from a loved one's life, you have to look past the surface and into the systems that shape their choices. In Tom Cruise's case, that system has a name: Scientology. To the outside world, Scientology might seem like just another Hollywood belief, another spiritual path in a city full of them. But for those who've lived inside it, and for the families who've felt its weight, it's something much more serious, something far more controlling. At the heart of the church's philosophy lies a concept called the suppressive person. It's a term used for anyone who is seen as an enemy to the church. That could mean someone who criticizes its teachings, someone who leaves the church, or even someone who simply chooses a different path. Once a person is labeled suppressive, Scientologists are instructed to cut them off completely. This practice is known as the disconnection policy. It doesn't matter if the person in question is a friend, a sibling, a spouse, or even a child. If they are considered a threat to the organization's beliefs or reputation, the church expects its members to disconnect from them. No calls, no visits, no contact. For most of us, that sounds unthinkable. To cut off someone you love because of their beliefs? Because they ask hard questions? But for members deeply embedded in the church, especially high-ranking ones like Tom Cruise, disconnection isn't just encouraged. It's expected. We've seen it before. Nicole Kidman, Tom's second wife, was never a practicing Scientologist, and after their divorce, she became estranged from their two adopted children, Connor and Isabella, both of whom remained committed to the church. Over the years, Nicole has spoken carefully, but clearly, about that distance. And though she has always expressed love for her children, she's also admitted that they chose to follow their own path. A path she was not welcome on. It's painful, it's personal, and it's not unique. Former Scientologists like Leah Remini have spoken openly about how the church actively breaks apart families when one person steps away. In her memoir and her docuseries Scientology and the Aftermath, Leah described losing friends, being shunned by loved ones, and watching people she cared about vanish from her life overnight. Now, put yourself in Katie Holmes' shoes. She wasn't just dealing with a difficult marriage or the pressures of celebrity. She was married to the church's most famous and powerful member, a man widely seen as the unofficial face of Scientology. Tom wasn't just a believer, he was a champion. A walking symbol of the church's strength and success. According to reports, Tom's bond with David Miscavige, the leader of Scientology, is more than spiritual. It's personal. They're close. Very close. Some say Miscavige is one of the few people Tom truly trusts. Which means when the church draws a line in the sand, Tom doesn't just respect it, he enforces it. So when Katie decided to leave, and take Suri with her, the implications were massive. She wasn't just walking away from a husband, she was stepping outside of an entire system that values obedience above all else. And once she did, the risk of being labeled a suppressive person became real. Not just for her, but for Suri as well. That's the part that's hard to sit with. Because it means that Tom Cruise, a man who once described fatherhood as the greatest joy of his life, may have believed, at least in part, that separating from his daughter was necessary to stay loyal to his faith. That's not to excuse it. That's not to say it's right. But it does give us a deeper look at why things happened the way they did. It's no longer just about a father who didn't make the time. It's about a man torn between two identities, Hollywood icon and devoted Scientologist, and the very real human cost of choosing one over the other. In the end, Katie knew what she was up against. She saw the power the church held over the man she married. And when the time came, she made a bold and quiet choice, to leave before the grip got any tighter. But how she left, and how fast she acted, might be the most remarkable part of this entire story. Most celebrity breakups play out in the tabloids, slow, messy, and public. But when Katie Holmes ended her marriage to Tom Cruise, she didn't just file for divorce. She executed a plan, quietly, swiftly, and with the precision of someone who knew she was working against something much bigger than just a broken relationship. It wasn't dramatic, it was strategic, and it caught almost everyone off guard, including Tom. According to multiple reports, Katie planned her escape from the marriage like a covert mission. She used burner phones to avoid detection. She secretly met with lawyers in 3 different states, California, New York, and possibly New Jersey, to weigh her options and ensure every detail was airtight. And when the time came, she filed for divorce while Tom was out of the country, giving herself and her daughter a critical head start. It worked. The couple's divorce was finalized in just 11 days, an astonishing timeline by Hollywood standards, especially when children and significant assets are involved. There were no drawn-out court battles, no media spectacles, no public statements filled with blame. Just a clean break. Quiet, efficient, done. But what makes this story so remarkable isn't just the speed or secrecy. It's the reason behind it all. Katie wasn't just trying to leave a marriage. She was trying to protect her daughter. From what, exactly? That's never been said out loud. But many believe it was the growing influence of Scientology. In a 2013 court deposition, Tom Cruise was directly asked if Katie left him, in part to protect Suri from Scientology. After dodging the question, he finally admitted, that was one of the assertions, yes. And in that one sentence, the entire story takes on a new shape. Because now we're not just talking about divorce. We're talking about a mother going to battle, silently, for her child's future, and winning. It's important to understand just how rare that is. Tom Cruise isn't just a movie star. He's one of the most powerful, protected, and well-connected figures in the entertainment industry. Add to that his relationship with Scientology, and it's easy to imagine how intimidating it must have been for Katie to take that step. Few women would dare challenge him, and even fewer would win full custody of their child without a fight. But Katie did. She had help. Her father, Martin Holmes, is a lawyer, and many believe he was a quiet force behind the scenes, helping to draw up the ironclad prenuptial agreement that allowed Katie to leave without financial fear. According to TMZ and People, she didn't walk away with a massive lump sum, but she secured child support, tuition, medical coverage, and most importantly, sole custody of Suri. It was never about the money. It was about freedom. The kind of freedom that would allow her to raise Suri without interference, from Tom, from the church, or from anyone else. And in doing so, Katie became a symbol for something much greater than a Hollywood love story gone wrong. She became a quiet hero for any woman who has ever felt trapped, for any mother who's had to make the impossible choice between keeping the peace or protecting their child. It wasn't loud, it wasn't flashy, but it was brave. And when you look at the way Katie and Suri have lived since, quietly, privately, on their own terms, it's clear her decision wasn't just bold. It was right. But the story doesn't end there, because after walking away from one of the most powerful men in the world, Katie still had to live with the consequences of her silence, and with the strict limitations that came next. When Katie Holmes left Tom Cruise, she left quietly. She didn't hold a press conference. She didn't sit down with Oprah or write a tell-all memoir. She vanished into a quieter life with her daughter Suri, far away from flashing lights and red carpets. And for years, we didn't hear a single word from her about the marriage, the church, or even Tom himself. Now we know why. According to Radar Online, part of Katie's divorce settlement included a set of strict conditions, ones that would shape her personal life for years to come. She was reportedly forbidden from publicly speaking ill of Tom Cruise or the Church of Scientology. But that wasn't all. She also couldn't publicly date anyone for 5 years, and no boyfriend, even in private, was allowed to spend time with Suri. Think about that. A grown woman, a mother, was legally bound not to be seen holding hands with a partner, not to live her life out loud, and not to let a significant other get close to the person who mattered most to her, her daughter. It's the kind of agreement that sounds like something out of a movie, but it was very real. During those 5 years, rumors swirled. Paparazzi would occasionally catch a blurry glimpse of Katie with Jamie Foxx, walking together in Malibu or laughing in a recording studio. But both of them denied the relationship, time and again, even when the pictures told a different story. And it wasn't because they were shy or unsure. It was because they were legally silenced. Compare that to other high-profile divorces. When Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie split, their custody battle became public almost instantly, with both sides releasing statements and legal filings that the media picked apart for years. When Johnny Depp and Amber Heard went their separate ways, the world saw everything, from courtroom drama to open accusations, to tell-all interviews. Their stories were messy, yes, but they were public. Katie's story was different. She chose privacy over publicity, peace over noise. But that choice came at a cost, because silence isn't free. For 5 years, she had to protect her daughter not only from the media, but from the emotional risk of bringing someone new into their lives. She had to hide, deny, deflect, just to keep the terms of the agreement and avoid stirring any legal or spiritual backlash. And yet, she did it, with grace, with quiet strength. She kept her word. She played by the rules. And in doing so, she gave Suri something more precious than headlines: stability. Because while the rest of the world speculated, Katie stayed focused on what mattered, giving her daughter a childhood that wasn't defined by fame or fear, but by normalcy. It's a lesson that so many women understand deeply, that freedom, real freedom, often comes with conditions. That sometimes, the cost of walking away from a powerful man isn't money or fame, it's silence. And yet, for the ones we love, that silence can be worth it. Katie Holmes may have been silenced by paper, but her actions spoke louder than any interview ever could. She built a life for her daughter, where love came first, not public image. And in doing so, she quietly became a role model for any parent who's ever had to put peace above pride. But even as she stayed quiet, the gap between Suri and her father only grew wider. Because while Katie was holding it all together, Tom was drifting further and further away. Most children remember their childhood through birthday parties, school plays, and Sunday morning pancakes with family. But for Suri Cruise, those early years came with something few kids have to deal with: the weight of the spotlight and the silence of absence. From the moment she was born, the world was watching. She wasn't just the daughter of Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes. She was the child of the moment. Her birth made international headlines. Paparazzi followed her every move. And for years, Suri couldn't walk down the street without flashbulbs chasing her tiny footsteps. Katie Holmes once shared how she would take Suri for walks in the park as early as 6 a.m. just to avoid the cameras. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. There's a photo of Suri as a toddler, smiling and waving at photographers, not because she wanted to, but because it was all she knew. But while the world saw the pictures and headlines, few noticed what was missing in the background. Her father. As Suri grew up, milestone after milestone came and went, without Tom Cruise. He wasn't there for birthdays. He didn't attend her school plays or recitals. And when she graduated from LaGuardia High School of Music and Art, one of the most celebrated performing arts schools in New York, he wasn't in the crowd. Instead, he was seen attending a Taylor Swift concert in New Jersey the day after. There were no photos of a proud dad with his arm around his daughter. No signs of balloons, cards, or celebratory dinners. For over a decade, Suri Cruise quietly grew up with a father who was absent. And while Katie Holmes did everything she could to give her daughter a stable and loving life, the truth is, a missing parent leaves a mark. Psychologists have long studied the effects of an absent father, especially on daughters. Girls often look to their fathers for their first understanding of love, safety, and self-worth. When that bond is broken or never formed, it can lead to lingering questions. Am I enough? Did I do something wrong? Why wasn't I worth staying for? Even when surrounded by love, those questions don't always go away. And for Suri, those questions likely came with a strange twist. Because her father wasn't just gone, he was everywhere else. On billboards, in movie trailers, smiling on talk shows, flying fighter jets, and saving the world on screen, while skipping the world of his own daughter. It's a different kind of pain when the person who's supposed to love you unconditionally becomes a stranger by choice. Now, to be fair, many celebrity children grow up in complicated families. Shiloh Jolie Pitt, the daughter of Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, has reportedly spent much of her life navigating distance and custody battles. Apple Martin, daughter of Gwyneth Paltrow and Chris Martin, grew up with divorced parents but was often seen spending time with both, even attending events with them years after the split. But Suri's experience was unique, because after 2012, when Katie won full custody, Tom Cruise simply faded from her life. And not just in private. Publicly, he stopped mentioning her entirely. In interviews, he would speak about his other children, Connor and Isabella, adopted during his marriage to Nicole Kidman, but rarely, if ever, about Suri. Some say that Scientology played a role. Others point to the divorce agreement, or the distance, or the media pressure. But regardless of the reason, the result was the same. Suri grew up without the presence, guidance, or support of her father, and yet through it all, she blossomed. With Katie's steady hand and unwavering presence, Suri built a life that was private, creative, and deeply grounded. She studied art, performed in school musicals, and stayed out of the tabloid chaos that once followed her everywhere. In 2022, Katie revealed that Suri even recorded the song Blue Moon for her mother's film Alone Together. It was a quiet, beautiful collaboration, a sign that Suri wasn't just surviving, she was finding her voice. But behind that voice is a story of resilience, of learning how to grow up when half of your story is missing, of finding strength, not in who shows up, but in who stays. And now, as Suri steps into adulthood, she's making her own choices. One of those choices sent a clear message, not just to the public, but to the father who never came back. For most of us, a name is something we're given. We grow into it. Sometimes we love it, sometimes we question it, but rarely do we change it, because changing your name isn't just about paperwork. It's about identity. It's about drawing a line between who you were and who you're choosing to become. That's what makes Suri Cruise's decision to change her last name so deeply personal and quietly powerful. In 2024, during her high school's production of The Addams Family, Suri played the role of Morticia. But it wasn't just her performance that drew attention. It was the name printed in the program, Suri Noel, no longer Cruise. Later, at her graduation from the prestigious LaGuardia High School of Music and Art, her diploma again read Suri Noel, a soft, graceful name. Noel happens to be her mother Katie Holmes' middle name, but it also carries a deeper meaning, one that doesn't need to be shouted to be heard. It was a statement, a message, a declaration without a single word spoken. By stepping away from the Cruise name, Suri was doing something many children of celebrities struggle to do. separate herself from the legacy she didn't choose. The name Cruz is iconic, instantly recognizable, globally famous. It opens doors in Hollywood, commands headlines, and brings with it a powerful brand. But Suri chose a different path. She didn't choose the spotlight. She chose her mother's name, the one who stayed. The one who protected her. The one who walked through fire to give her a life outside of fame. This wasn't rebellion. It wasn't about headlines or revenge. It was about ownership of her life, her story, and her future. And while some might see it as a small change, those who understand the emotional weight of names know better. A name can carry pride or pain. It can honor legacy or erase it. For Suri, letting go of her father's last name wasn't about anger. It was about closure. This act, so quiet, yet so bold, echoes a truth that resonates with many. Sometimes, the only way to heal is to redefine who you are, on your own terms. She's not the only child of fame to take that step. Others have done it too, some privately, others publicly. But few have done it as gracefully as Suri, without interviews, without drama. Just a quiet shift toward becoming her own person. And in doing so, she teaches us something profound. That your past doesn't get to write your future. That you don't have to carry a name or a legacy that no longer reflects who you are. And that sometimes, the strongest move isn't to confront what hurt you, but to step away from it completely. Now, as she enters adulthood as Suri Noel, she's not just leaving behind a name. She's claiming a new beginning. One shaped by love, by choice, and by the kind of strength that doesn't need a stage to be seen. But while Suri steps forward into a life of her own making, one question remains. What about the father she left behind? The man who once promised he'd never let her down, and who now, after all these years, is left watching from the sidelines. And that brings us to the next chapter in this journey, why Tom Cruise chose not to return. By now, it's clear that Tom Cruise didn't simply drift away from his daughter. He made a choice, one that, to many, seems heartbreaking, and yet it's a choice rooted in something more complex than anger or neglect. Because, according to those who know the inner workings of Scientology, Tom's silence may not come from a place of rejection, but from unwavering religious loyalty. Tom Cruise isn't just a member of the Church of Scientology. He is arguably its most powerful and visible advocate. Over the years, he's been photographed alongside David Miscavige, the church's leader, attending ceremonies, giving speeches, and even receiving medals of honor. For decades, Tom has credited Scientology with saving his life, shaping his success, and grounding his identity. So when Katie Holmes left the marriage, and the church, with Suri, it wasn't just a personal separation. In the eyes of Scientology, it was something much more serious. It was a form of spiritual betrayal. And within the church's doctrine, that betrayal comes with consequences. As we've explored, Scientology has a concept called the suppressive person, someone who is seen as harmful to the church's teachings and influence. Members are strongly discouraged, and in some cases outright forbidden, from maintaining contact with suppressive individuals. That includes family. In a 2013 court deposition during a defamation lawsuit, Tom was asked directly whether Katie had left him in part to protect their daughter from Scientology. He initially deflected, calling the question offensive. But under pressure, he conceded, yes, that was one of the assertions. He was also asked if Katie and Suri had become suppressive persons. Tom didn't confirm, but he didn't deny it either. Instead, he said that is a distortion and simplification of the matter. Carefully chosen words. But they spoke volumes. Because for a man as deeply committed to his faith as Tom, even love for his own child may not override his religious beliefs. It's not a matter of hatred, it's about obedience, allegiance, conviction. And that's what makes this story so painful. Tom Cruise may still love his daughter in his heart. He may think of her often. He may wish things were different. But in the world he's chosen to live in, being in her life might be viewed as disloyalty to his church, his spiritual path, and the man he's built himself to be. This isn't the first time a parent has chosen belief over blood. Throughout history, and across many religions, there are stories of devout individuals cutting ties with family members in the name of faith. In some ultra-Orthodox communities, parents have disowned children who leave the faith. In cult-like environments, those who step away are shunned, exiled, or erased from family records. Even in more mainstream settings, we've seen people make heartbreaking choices when their values collide with those they love. And so, we're left with a haunting question. At what point does faith, any faith, stop being a source of strength and start becoming a wedge between people? Where is the line between spiritual conviction and emotional abandonment? For Tom Cruise, only he knows what that line looks like. Only he knows the true reasons for his absence. But from the outside looking in, it's hard not to wonder, how can a man once so devoted to fatherhood turn his back so completely? Maybe he tells himself it's for the greater good. Maybe he believes that staying away is what's best for everyone involved. Or maybe, over time, silence became a habit he no longer knew how to break. But for Suri, the result is the same. A father who's alive, successful, celebrated around the world, and yet completely missing from her life. And now, as she forges ahead under a new name, the question isn't whether Tom will come back. The question is, does she even want him to? In a world that constantly watches, judges, and speculates, being a celebrity is already hard. But being a single mother, under the microscope of Hollywood fame, takes a different kind of strength. Katie Holmes didn't just walk away from Tom Cruise. She walked into a new life where she would be solely responsible for raising a little girl in the shadow of the most powerful name in entertainment. She didn't have a PR team crafting statements. She didn't write a tell-all book. She simply rolled up her sleeves and got to work. Being a mom, it wasn't glamorous. It wasn't loud. But it was real. Katie has spoken in rare interviews about what those early years were like after the divorce. How she takes Suri out for walks in Central Park at 6 a.m, just to avoid the paparazzi. She wasn't doing it for show. She was doing it so her daughter could feel something resembling normal childhood freedom. She once shared an InStyle that she kept a drawer full of gift cards at home, so if Suri got invited to a last-minute birthday party, she'd be ready. It's a small thing. But it's also the kind of detail that tells you exactly what kind of mom she is. There were no red carpets. No press conferences. Just early mornings, handmade crafts, bedtime stories, and quiet sacrifices. In 2020, during the height of the pandemic, Katie wrote an essay for Vogue Australia. She spoke about how quarantine became a precious time for her and Suri. They cooked together, sewed, painted, wrote, not for the cameras, not for publicity, but because they had each other, and they had the quiet. That's what real motherhood often looks like. It's not always picture perfect. It's not about getting it right all the time. It's about showing up, again and again, especially when no one's watching. Katie has also said that motherhood changed her, made her more present. She doesn't stress about the little things anymore. If the schedule changes or plans fall through, she asks one simple question. Is this going to make her smile? If the answer is yes, that's all she needs. And maybe that's the greatest lesson in all of this, that being a good parent doesn't mean being perfect. It doesn't mean shielding your child from every pain or giving them everything they want. It means being there, listening, adapting, loving without condition. Katie Holmes has quietly built a life where her daughter could grow, not in the shadow of a last name, but in the light of emotional safety and stability. She allowed Suri to explore her creativity, to learn, to find her voice, on her own terms. In 2022, when Suri recorded a version of Blue Moon for one of Katie's films, it wasn't a publicity stunt. Katie said she simply let her daughter do her thing. She's very talented, she added, and I let her do it the way she wanted. There's so much grace in that sentence, so much trust, so much quiet pride. There's no doubt the journey hasn't been easy. But Katie Holmes has never tried to make it look perfect. She's made it intentional, steady, rooted in love. And now, as Suri steps into adulthood, it's clear she's not just the daughter of a movie star. She's the daughter of a woman who chose presence over publicity, peace over power, and love over legacy. As we near the end of this story, one final truth becomes undeniable. Katie stayed. Through everything. And sometimes, that's all a child needs to thrive. At the height of his fame, Tom Cruise once told Vanity Fair, "My whole life, I always wanted to be a father. I always said to myself that my children would be able to depend on me, that I'd never make a promise I couldn't keep." And yet, here we are, more than a decade later, with a daughter who grew up without him, a young woman who changed her last name, who never saw her father in the crowd at her plays, at her birthdays, or on the most important day of her academic life, her high school graduation. So what remains of that promise? Is it simply a line from the past, buried under years of silence? Or is there still a part of Tom Cruise that wonders what it would take to find his way back to his daughter? Hollywood loves a dramatic comeback, a tearful reunion, a father running through the rain to hold his child one more time. And maybe some people still believe that moment could come, that Tom will one day step out of the shadows, pick up the phone, and try to make things right. But this isn't a movie. In real life, relationships don't always get scripted endings. They unfold in private through years of choices, some brave, some painful, some irreversible. The truth is, there are obstacles to any reunion that go far beyond time or distance. There's the deep loyalty Tom still seems to hold to Scientology, a religion that may continue to draw hard boundaries between him and anyone considered, quote, outside. There's the emotional wall that's built when birthdays, graduations, and milestones pass without a single call. And there's the simple reality that Suri may not want that relationship anymore, not because of bitterness, but because she has already moved on. She's found her voice. She's claimed her identity. And she did it without him. Still, we can't help but ask, is reconciliation possible? Is forgiveness something she might offer someday? Not for him, but for herself? And more importantly, if you were in her shoes, would you? Would you forgive a father who chose absence over presence? Would you open the door if he knocked after all these years? These are the questions that sit quietly at the end of this story. Questions that aren't just about celebrities, but about all of us. Because at its heart, this isn't just a Hollywood tale, it's a human one. About love, about loss, about what it means to grow up when someone you once trusted chooses to walk away. Suri Cruise, now Suri Noel, has shown the world that healing doesn't always require an apology. Sometimes it just requires moving forward. But as long as both are still out there, living their lives under the same sky, there's always a sliver of possibility. Not of a perfect reunion, but perhaps of a quiet understanding. And maybe that's enough. What do you think? If you were Suri, would you open your heart again? Or would you keep walking the path you've built without looking back? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next time as we explore more untold stories from behind the scenes of fame, family, and finding your way. Thanks for watching.